Hello, everyone. Good to see each and every one of you. Welcome.
Yes, we're so happy to be back together. We had a bit of a longer break. Last time we gathered was in May, um, or no, April actually. So it's been 2 months. Are you all hearing well? Can you hear well? Great. Okay. So this is the fifth gathering in this year's monthly series hosted by the Beloved Community for Engaged Spirituality. And just to remember this journey we've been on this year, in January, we practiced our annual examen. We looked back at our life to look deeply into the past year. In February, we got to revisit an interview with Robert Ellsberg about the life of Dorothy Day. In March, Amita Schmidt came and we interviewed her about the powerful teachings of Dipa Ma, a Bengali Buddhist teacher. In April, we were deeply honored to have Andrew Young, Ambassador Young, share about his lifetime of grounded spiritual practice and activism. And so today we gather to harvest the wisdom of these very rich teachings from these sessions this year. So we'll begin with a few announcements and then a guided meditation. And then Adam and I will reflect together on each of the three interviews and open space for you to share what you received, what moved you in these teachings as well. So together we'll look back over this time and harvest the insights and practices that have really touched us the most and explore how we can carry them more fully into our daily lives. So just to remind anyone who might be new, we meet on Saturdays from 11 to 12:30. And after this July session, we'll take a summer pause and we'll be in touch with you over the summer about the dates of our fall meetings. But they'll continue to take place on Saturdays at 11 Eastern monthly. And there's more good stuff coming in the fall too that we'll let you know about in the next months. Um, and then also, all of the gatherings are recorded, and the recordings are sent out to those who register about a week after.
And just a reminder for everyone that this gathering and all of our gatherings are open to all. They are held in a spirit of deep ecumenism. Whatever your background or religious affiliation, whatever spirituality you practice, you are welcome here. You do not need to belong to any particular faith tradition to be part of these gatherings and to continue to travel with this community. At the same time, both of us, Kaira Jewel and I, are grounded in our own traditions when we teach. We offer them not as something to impose, but rather as resources we have received from those in whose footsteps we try to follow. And from there, we keep sort of trying to point towards what Howard Thurman so beautifully named this kind of an importance of tending our inner life, listening for that almost silent whisper of guidance, the voice of the genuine, and staying connected to that deep place within all of us um, to energize our actions in the world, because in the end, our spirituality, if it is lived authentically, should always send us back into the world, into the heart of human suffering, to be, partners of the divine in transfiguring our world. So we're so glad that you're here and that you chose to spend this Saturday morning or afternoon or evening, depending where you are, or Saturday early morning in case of Dorothy. I think it's just after 5 a.m. for you. So thank you.
And so we invite us all just to take a moment to connect with our breath and our bodies, and to notice that we are connected to the earth, that we are supported by in this moment. To appreciate this earth and all those who came before us, who made this place a place that could host us and provide for us. And so we invite you all to check in and connect with the group here. And the prompt today is related to the way in which we're going to reflect on these three teachers. Where has love taken root in your life this week, even in the smallest way? Where have you found yourself opening maybe to something, or letting go of something, or connecting to something in yourself or in someone else, or yeah, making space for something that felt like, kindness or care or receptivity or connection. And Adam and I will read a few of these out. So just reflect, and as you're ready, can share in a few words. So, in the home and heart, through laughter and music. Thank you. Healing conflict with a challenging relationship. Trusting in my healthy routines.
Loving and taking care of my two sick doggies. Connecting with a Dharma sibling, seeing stray kitten in my garden.
Time spent with grandchildren. Connecting with a neighbor and witnessing him care for his wife, who is in the beginning stages of dementia, and feeling them and my heart.
In the ultimate dimension of everyday life, remembering my dad and feeling his guidance close to me in a difficult situation.
Sangha care. Reconnecting with a beloved friend in person, both Glorious and Michelle.
Metta, love for myself. Being present with a younger assistant helper at work.
In the garden with its many visitors and inhabitants, these Nipmuc lands, providing temporary love and safety for two tiny children.
Connecting with my community for cancer care. interacting with neighbors when walking our dog this morning.
Through metta practice for some difficult people in the public arena, with my beloved daughter and son as we craft together an intergenerational home in France. Thank you. Thank you for these beautiful offerings. Yeah, listening to these witnesses and testimonies of love is one way love can arise for us. Thank you. So I invite you now to once again just take a couple of deep breaths as we transition into the meditation. Just feeling the breath coming in, the breath flowing out as you settle in and let yourself fully arrive. Just acknowledging that for those of us in the Northeast, we may be finding it a little less easy to breathe with all the wildfire smoke. We couldn't walk our dog this morning because the air was so unhealthy. So we may be arriving here with challenges from our immediate environment. Also just holding awareness of the grief that may be present as we look at our past week and the people killed in traffic stops by ICE agents in both Houston and in Maine. And so many other things that may be in our awareness as we gather. So just giving ourselves space and time to honor whatever may be here. And to feel the presence of this community supporting us. That we are here also supporting everyone else. So in this meditation, we'll draw on an image that came up in the interview about Dipa, the image of a refuge tree where we can gather and sort of feel our different ancestors around us, our loved ones, and sit under their shade, letting their wisdom and love and truth come through us, protect us. So, tending to your seat and checking in to see if there's anything you want to do to be more comfortable so that you can be both present in a noble posture and also at ease and relaxed. If you're in a chair or in some seated position and you can have your feet on the floor, wonderful, or whatever position works for you, letting your hands rest gently on your lap. And if you wish closing your eyes or lowering your gaze. Noticing the rhythm of the inhale and the exhale. Breathing in. I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out. I know I'm breathing out. In, out. Letting any sounds around you simply be part of this moment. Breathing and letting your body settle into the support of the earth. Releasing on each exhale any tension in the body, in the shoulders, in the belly, in the hips. Allowing the body to relax and ground into the stability of the earth. And if it feels helpful, you can put a hand on your heart or your belly, just feeling the warmth of your touch. Rooting yourself in this moment, right here, right now. And now, in your mind's eye, imagine that you're sitting beneath a great tree, a tree with deep roots and wide branches, a tree that has stood for many seasons, offering shade and shelter to all who come near. This is the refuge tree of your lineage, all the teachers, ancestors, and loved ones who have held you, guided you, and shown you the way. They are gathered here with you now in the form of this tree. You might see faces, people who have taught you, lived with you, inspired you. Or you might simply sense their presence, their energy, their love, their wisdom. Some of them you may have met in person, family members, teachers, friends, mentors. And some you have never met, ancestors whose names you carry, spiritual teachers who have shaped your path, like Dorothy Day, Dipa Ma, and Andrew Young. Let yourself feel their presence. They are not far away. Their practice, their love, their wisdom, it's still available to you. It never goes away. Where would it go? As you sit under this great tree, let yourself receive. You don't need to ask for anything specific, but be open to whatever is being offered to you. A quality you need, a reminder, a sense of being held, a quiet encouragement. You might imagine the branches of the tree reaching down toward you as if offering you a blessing or protection. You might imagine the roots beneath you holding you steady and secure. Breathe in whatever you are receiving: love, steadiness, clarity, courage. Breathe out whatever you might be ready to let go of: worry, fear, self-judgment, any sense of separateness. There's nothing you need to do. Just be here in the shade of this tree, letting yourself be held by those who have gone before you. resting back into this embrace of support and care and guidance. Connecting with the root system of this tree, rooted deep into the ground. And feel yourself rooted, not as an idea, but as an embodied, felt sense. You belong here. You are held. You are part of something larger than yourself. Now, gradually bringing your awareness back to your breath, to your body sitting here in the room or the place where you are. Let yourself carry something of this feeling with you, the shade of the tree, the sense of being held, the confidence that you are rooted in something true. I'll invite the sound of the bell. Oh, let's take a collective breath together, just feeling the support of this community, of these three teachers, and of this moment. Thank you, everyone, for your practice. So, in these last three gatherings, as we mentioned, we had the privilege of hearing from three extraordinary teachers. We heard Robert Ellsberg on Dorothy Day, Amita Schmidt on Dipa, and Ambassador Andrew Young on his own life and work. So we learned about the forces and people who grounded them. And we chose this meditation because we want to invite us all to think about our own refuge tree, the teachers, ancestors, and loved ones who hold us up. Because that is a practice that we learned about from Amita Schmidt that Joseph Goldstein shared, of visualizing your teachers, your mentors, friends, beloved family members in a tree and sitting under it and letting their wisdom and love and truth come through you. And so Joseph Goldstein shared with Amita that Dipa is one of the teachers that he sees in his tree. And this summer, I met a monk, a Theravadan monk, who did something kind of similar. He printed on a sheet many tiny photos of all of his teachers, his parents, his siblings, his loved ones. And he places it on his altar and looks at it every day and draws strength from their presence. And he passed it around to us. We were in a gathering, and it was very moving to look at um, his version of this refuge tree. But that is what we're doing here today, right? We're not just reflecting on these three lives of these teachers. We're sitting under their shade. We're letting their wisdom nourish us. We're harvesting, our connection to them, and the way they're impacting us, and the living presence of these teachers and the lineage of love and practice that they represent. And we're doing it together. So, as we reflect on each of their lives, Dorothy, Dipa Ma, Andrew, I invite you to ask yourself, what do I want to carry forward from this person? What do I want to take root in me? Because that's how they live on, that's how we continue them. Um, so, um, so first we'll share a brief, like a paragraph capturing of each person's life. Adam and I will share that together, and then Adam and I will go deeper. So I'll ask Adam. I'll do a mini interview with Adam about what moved him in Dorothy Day's story, and then he'll ask me about what really struck me in Deepa Ma's. And then we'll both be in conversation about Andrew Young, what we're carrying forward from his wisdom. And then we'll open it up to all of you for you to share your own reflections, questions, and what's taking root in you. Okay, so Adam will start us off.
Yeah, so I will start with just a brief overview of Dorothy Day. First of all, I discovered Dorothy after coming to this country. I was taking a theology class, and one of the professors who was teaching it constantly talked about her. And that encouraged me to begin to go to the Catholic Worker in New York City to help them fold their newspapers on Friday afternoons. And I come out of the anarchist movement, so initially I went there sort of being very excited about someone else in the Catholic worker movement who was this pronounced anarchist who died on the protest line, because he was always protesting about something else. But immediately everyone kept on telling me that they are there because of Dorothy, because they've met Dorothy, because of how she lived. And so, just as an overview, her life was really a remarkable story. As a young person, she was engaged in radical politics, hanging out with a lot of communists and anarchists and socialists, um, and eventually experienced a conversion to Catholicism that enabled her to sort of fuse those two traditions. Um, she was wondering, why are all the saints caring for the poor, but no one seems to be asking, why are people poor? And so she really fused those two traditions, the social justice tradition that is all about sort of analyzing society and why things are the way they are, why inequalities, racism, economic injustice is present, and then connecting that with works of mercy, with service. And as a result of that fusion, and we will talk more about it later, she co founded the Catholic Worker House, which eventually became a movement of many houses, a few hundred houses now, all around the US and also in other countries. And the Catholic Worker became both a movement of prophetic critique of the system, but also this kind of a living alternative of trying to demonstrate what a different world would look like. So they had a network of houses of hospitality, farming communities, um, a newspaper. Um, and in all of those, prayer, voluntary simplicity, hospitality, and solidarity with the poor were sort of woven into daily life. And so for Dorothy Day, the gospel was never merely something that she needed to believe in, it was something that she needed to embody. And so that was sort of her life. That's what her life was about. And, a little later, we will sort of dive into some other components of her spirituality. Kaira Jewel, what about Deepa Ma? What's her story?
Yeah. Well, I was just reflecting that there's some little parallels where Dorothy Day was longing for, um, had this kind of these haunting spiritual questions, and then a very profound conversion. Dipa Ma, a Bengali woman, wanted to practice meditation, but she kept being told she couldn't because she was, you know, she was a mother, she was a wife, she was, there were so many obstacles to her being able to practice. But then she endured the death of two children, her husband, and had a very severe illness, and was finally able to begin practice when she was told she was terminally ill. And so she became this kind of fierce, it was like a matter of life and death, and she was just ready to give it all to the practice, and that led to a kind of, you could say, I guess, in Buddhism, a kind of conversion of awakening, and she lived a long life after that. And she became known as the patron saint of householders, showing that awakening is available to everyone, regardless of circumstance. So she really, and she was, one of the very few non-monastics, women teachers who was really making meditation and mindfulness um, available to others. So she embodied a fierce combination of practice, um, where she said you just have to, really practice very, with your whole heart. But at the same time, there was a lot of love and gentleness and care. And she talked about mindfulness and loving kindness being basically the same thing. Um, which was, was the feminine aspect of her being. And in the male teachers of her time were a lot more, there was a lot more strictness and emphasis on kind of pushing through, and not that gentleness. So even after her death, people continue to feel her presence. People have shared how she has continued to help them after she passed. So her energy, her force, they're still available to tap into. And Adam, um, you want to speak about Andrew Young?
Yeah, so the unique thing about Andrew Young was that he was able to tell his own story. It wasn't a story about him told by someone else. And it was a very moving story of someone formed in a racially mixed neighborhood in New Orleans, whose father early on taught him, don't get mad, get smart. Um, he joined Dr. King's staff almost by accident, and brought really sort of in his conversation, he talked about a very kind of distinctive way to nonviolence, not just as a strategy, that produces result, not just as a form of protest, but really as a way of relationship building. So he befriended, white supremacists, jailers, and sheriffs, believing that people change through human connection. That somehow, when we connect with others, when we sort of show up for them in a way with all of our humanity, that can sort of evoke something of their humanity. And he told a beautiful story that I'm sure we will reflect on. Um, and so, really, during his time with us, he shared elements of his stories, elements of sort of experiences that he had with Dr. King and in the civil rights movement. And it was all very beautiful. One of the lines that really touched me deeply was this saying that he shared with us. It's easier to love the hell out of people because everybody's got some hell in them. Um, yeah, it was just a very moving conversation. So I'm looking forward to sort of unpacking that and also hearing how all of you registered some of those profound teachings.
Yeah, so let's start with Dorothy. And Robert Ellsberg is our friend. It was wonderful to have him share about her. He was very close to her. So, how did Dorothy Day ground her path and her vocation?
Yeah, so first of all, Robert Ellsberg, I just really loved that he was able to hang out with us and share. I'm a little jealous because I feel like he's met all of my favorite, people, all the sort of spiritual teachers and great lights of the 20th century. And so it's always a lot of fun to sort of ask him questions about how is that person, and he has some of the funniest stories, about these wonderful teachers. But I think for Dorothy Day, just sort of reflecting on her journey, what grounded her, what really brought her, what really gave her a sense of her calling. Um, one of the things that I think is sort of important to talk about is how gradually she developed this capacity to be able to sort of feel God's guidance in her life. How gradually she developed this receptivity and this openness and this sensitivity to that inner sort of, I don't know what to call it, voice, for lack of a better word. And so, her life wasn't easy. Her conversion wasn't easy. But at some point, as she sort of, started spending a lot of time in Staten Island, which is one of the boroughs of New York City at that point, it was a pretty rural borough. She had a little shack where she would spend time with a man who was her partner, Forrester. Um, as she started walking along the shores and as she learned from Forrester about nature, um, and Forrester was, sort of had a very scientific mind, was very much committed to science. He was an anarchist. He didn't want to hear about God or religion or marriage for that. It was all about being free for him, as the anarchist tradition sort of values freedom very much. And so, as she began sort of walking the shores of Staten Island, uh, she really became somewhat of a nature mystic, I think, and that is often overlooked in her story. Um, she then began praying the Psalms, and of course, the Psalms have a lot of nature imagery that is quite beautiful. And she began opening herself to that sacredness of life, to that presence that she perhaps felt was holding her, was guiding her. And at some point, she got pregnant. She had a child, and she wanted to baptize her child in the Catholic Church. She had this sense that she really needed to offer that to her daughter. And of course, Forrester was not very happy about that. He just could not understand why would she want to mess with organized religion. She can enjoy all the sacredness of life on the shores of Staten Island all she wants, but why would she, I mean, have anything to do with the Pope and with the Catholic Church? Organized religion. Um, but she did baptize her child. And then eventually her own conversion followed. And of course, then again, there was a huge problem. She wanted to get married, and Forrester just wouldn't have any of that. He didn't want to hear about it. Obviously, they both loved each other, and Robert Ellsberg told us that even though Dorothy, they never talked about it, in her sort of official autobiography, but for at least 5 years or so, she wrote these pleading letters, love letters to him, to reconsider. She really loved this man, but somehow for her, it was a choice that she had to make. She either chooses God or man, and she chose to, and she decided to choose God. Um, but as she became Catholic, of course, there were some issues there. She realized that the church was not really very much engaged with the poor. The church had beautiful encyclicas, beautiful teachings. The gospel itself talks a lot about the poor, talks about meekness and nonviolence, and many other things. But somehow, the church was not really showing up in that way. And so she had this profound experience. She was a journalist. She went to DC to cover a protest. And the big question that arose for her was, why is the church not organizing or leading this protest? Why is it the communists and the anarchists? What about the church? We have this wonderful teaching of Jesus, the person who always stayed close to the poor, who talked about bringing, the good news to the poor, and yet somehow the church is not following in his footsteps. And so, right after that experience, with lots of questions on her mind, she went to the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception in DC, and it just so happened that it was the feast of the Immaculate Conception, and she prayed for guidance. She prayed for guidance. She prayed and cried and really wanted God to answer how to integrate this new faith that she has and this new home that is the church with this conviction that she needs to be showing up for the poor, that she needs to do something for the poor. And almost immediately after returning to New York, she meets this man, Peter Maureen, who was this French kind of peasant intellectual who could often people just assume that he was one of the homeless guys, who lived on the Bowery, and mostly he slept on the Bowery with a lot of homeless men and women. And he convinced her that she should start a newspaper, and he had the whole program that we can talk about. And that meeting with this person who became her mentor really brought together all of her longings into one place. And that's how she knew who she really meant to become, not just as an activist, but as a person of faith who is really following Jesus, who can integrate not only service to the poor, not only prayer, but also systemic analysis and a life that reflects, that points to uh, what Jesus talked about, namely the kingdom of God that we are meant to build one person at a time. So that is sort of how Dorothy Day found her calling.
Mm,
And what happened? What were some of the steps?
beautiful. Thank you so much for fleshing that out for us and um, that moment of her really asking for guidance and then how it showed up in the form of this Peter Morin, who then they went on to found the Catholic worker movement together, is so beautiful. So share with us a little bit, what kind of movement did she create? What vision shaped it? Um,
Yeah, so the Catholic worker movement sort of embraced this kind of anarchist and personalist vision, which meant that, Catholic worker houses tend to be non-hierarchical, pretty disorganized sometimes, but yet very beautiful, and so maybe just to kind of outline some components that could be very helpful. So first of all, they had a newspaper, which was really meant to be this kind of a prophetic critique of the system, where they brought in the gospel values and also some of the social encyclicas of the Catholic Church, as well as inspiring people like Gandhi and Tolstoy and others to really offer that critique from a perspective that is gospel based, that is shaped like Jesus, and that also is committed to nonviolence. But for them, it was not enough just to offer a critique. They also had to not just talk about alternatives, which they talked about alternatives, including in their newspaper, what the future society should look like, but also to embody that alternative, both in their personal lives, but also within their organizational structure and within what their movement was. And so, in addition to the newspaper, they also had houses of hospitality, which offered food on daily basis and also invited the poor to simply live with them. Uh, and it wasn't a charity model. And what I mean by that is that it wasn't, a bunch of professionals making professional salaries, showing up, 9 to 5 and serving the poor. Instead, everyone committed to living in a voluntary simplicity. So the poor were guests, were members. And eventually it was not really distinguishable, who came out of homelessness and who was maybe sort of a young intellectual who experienced a conversion and decided to move into one of the Catholic worker houses. So everyone lived in the same way. Every day, bread and soup were offered to anyone who needed it. On Fridays, there were these meetings for clarification of thought. And that's because Peter Morin believed that it's not enough to just, act. It's not enough to pray. We also have to study. And so each Friday they would have these gatherings to study and to clarify what they were thinking. And then, in addition to that, and this was a very kind of prophetic dimension, and I mean, we're talking about 1930s, 1940s, they also had what Peter Morin called agrarian universities, meaning farms. And so they developed this critique of an industrial and a technological society where they believed that, if we could have farms, all of us who are out of work, all of us who are disconnected from each other and the land, all of us could simply reconnect with the earth, work and with our own hands, and be able to provide for everyone and live more sustainable lives. Now, as Robert Ellsberg mentioned in the interview, those farms were not necessarily always very successful. But they were so ahead of the time, and there are still some farms that exist today. Um, so that was sort of the structure of the houses, and I think that another component that is very important is the very spirituality both of Dorothy Day and the Catholic worker, which I think that sort of opens it up even more. And so maybe I'll move to that. What do you think, Kyra Jewel?
Well, I was thinking, yeah, we could talk about maybe a final question because we we
Yeah.
actually there's so much we could just spend the whole
Yes.
session on Dorothy Day. It's so great to hear you share all this. Would it be okay to come to a final question about
Yeah.
what what most moved you about her life um, and is there a particular moment or teaching, from the Robert Ellsberg story of her life that you're carrying with you? And what are the teachings that are relevant for us today from her life?
Yeah, so I think what moved me personally about her is this understanding, that we can experience God in the poor. And there's this famous story that Robert didn't tell, but I think is very important. Catherine Doherty, who's another sort of really wonderful teacher, and we can talk about her some other time, but she came to visit Dorothy Day in New York, and they were, sort of ready to go to sleep, and all of a sudden someone knocks on the door. And it's a homeless person with a very advanced sort of stage of syphilis, with wounds all over her body and etc. And Dorothy Day just welcomes her, embraces her, and gives her her own bed. And Catherine Doherty is like, I mean, you can get infected, this stuff is dangerous. And Dorothy Day looked at her and said, what the heck are you talking about? Christ just came to visit us, and you're talking about, playing it safe? Uh, and I'm paraphrasing. And so I think that this kind of Franciscan emphasis, like Saint Francis, who went to visit a leper, and initially he was repulsed by that, but as he stayed with it, there was a certain sweetness that he experienced, and he realized that the leper transfigured in front of him into Christ. And so this understanding that, we need to have proximity to the poor, that is where we meet God. That's a privileged place of meeting God. And that unless we have proximity to the poor, we're not really living our spirituality well. Um, in addition to that, what also moved me is, we often talk about Dorothy Day as this amazing activist who got, arrested all the time, who started a movement, who was very outspoken, but we rarely talk about her as a contemplative. And the truth of the matter is that Dorothy Day woke up early every day and spent hours in prayer, doing the divine office, praying the divine office, praying the Psalms, praying the Rosary, going to daily Mass. And she believed in this kind of Benedictine fusion of prayer, study, work, and service. Uh, so she had this kind of a very integrated way of life. And I love that because nothing that she had done would have been possible without her prayer life. And we oftentimes don't look at that. In addition to that, she was really a follower of one of my favorite saints, Saint Therese of Lisieux, who talked about the little way. Saint Therese of Lisieux has this thing that she had a desire to be a great saint, but she couldn't really do what great saints did. So she believed that she discovered what could be an elevator that takes us straight to God, skipping steps. That instead of doing big things, we can do small things, but with great love. focusing on really loving, on really being merciful, on really practicing the Beatitudes in small ways. And then the final thing that I'll say, what also inspires me about Dorothy, these days we talk about retreats, and I mean, I'm included in that. I worry about, will I have my private bathroom? Dorothy Day, her retreats, whenever she got burned out, and had no energy to do her work, she would accept a speaking engagement and then would get on a Greyhound bus and travel for 2, 3 days to a location where she's supposed to give a talk. And being on a Greyhound bus and praying, that was her retreat. So I think that that's a huge lesson for all of us that we can really take our retreats in many places, including on New York City subway, or by going for a walk, or by simply locking ourselves in a closet in our house for an hour and really praying deeply. So this is maybe where we will end, because I'm sorry for taking so much time. I really love Dorothy Day, and over the years she sort of became an important saint for me.
Thank you, Adam. It's really great to hear so from your heart how her life has moved you and how she can guide all of us
Yeah,
the way you
yeah.
just shared.
So
Uh,
now, I let's go into Deepama. I was also very moved by that conversation, but I knew less about Deepama. And the question for you, Kaira Jewel, that I have is Amita talked about Deepama having this kind of incredible confidence that anyone, literally anyone, could awaken. And awakening in Buddhist circles is perceived as this kind of a special thing. So, yet Deepa Ma taught that anyone could do it, and she taught meditation to people, who had struggles, who struggled with things like mental illness and other things, and simply guided them step by step towards awakening. She taught meditation to people who were very busy, who were not monastics, who didn't have the luxury of just checking out and sort of, being serious meditators in that way. I mean, they became serious meditators. So I'm wondering if you could speak about that, this kind of availability of her teachings. What did you think about that?
yeah, yeah, thank you. I'm just going to make a note about our time because we have about 20 more minutes. I think we'll just get
Oh,
a
really?
chance to
That's
do
all
a
we have?
few, we'll do
Oh,
a
no.
few things
Oh,
on Deepa Ma and then we'll open it up to hear you. So we probably won't get to Andrew Young, but that's okay. We can pull out the learnings uh, maybe another time. But this is this is one of the things I think is most special about Deepa Ma. Her her incredible faith in everyone to awaken. Like basically nothing could make you exempt from being able to wake up in her eyes. No, nothing you'd done, no limiting factor in your life. Like that was the energy of her faith. And I think Amita described Dipa Ma as someone who embodied this, we practice without regard for body or life. Like you're ready to give it all up, but with all the love in your heart. Like not this kind of self-punishing or overriding, but this like deep commitment. And I think yeah, and one of the things, she talked about is every day we have to immerse ourselves in the practice. Like, don't let a day go by where you haven't at least, dipped your toe in the water, but hopefully your whole body, like really giving yourself to your practice. And I think her faith that other people, that anyone could awaken, it was really based on her own experience of what the practice can do. Like, she was in such a limited, you could say, marginal state, right? Like you talked about Dorothy Day meeting this unhoused woman with syphilis. Deepa Ma was not at the height of her life when she went to the monastery. She was about to die. They had told her she had a terminal illness, and she just gave herself to the practice, and the practice saved her. And she was in the depths of grief. She had lost two children. Her husband had died. Like, you couldn't have done more to destabilize and, like pull the rug out from someone. And yet in that state, she achieved the highest, the deepest, whatever you call it, potential a human can achieve. And so I think because of her own life, her own suffering, her own pain, and what she was able to do with that pain, she just felt no one was beyond the embrace of the transformative power of this practice. And um, and listening to Amita talk about this, reading about Dipa Ma in her book, it just really, I have to say, it very much intensified the wish to practice more in me, of like to give myself more, because she kind of encourages all of us, you could say, is egging all of us on, saying, go, 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 go. You can do this. Keep going, keep going. Don't kind of lose your momentum or think that this isn't available to you. But this real kind of uplift that, we can do, each of us can do this in our own way. And it may not look at all like, the classical, being a monastic or going on a long retreat, but just this really day-to-day emphasis um, on being profoundly aware of the most mundane things, right? Um, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think maybe the next question is sort of how do you read Deepama in the context of the Plum Village tradition and your own sort of experience as both having been a monastic for quite a few years and also being a layperson and living in the world. I wonder if that would be sort of helpful
Mhm,
for people to sort of think about those differences and how to make it work.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. Well, I remember once I was a nun and we were in summer retreat and we had the family, families were there and parents and children, the children's program, and there was a Q&A with Thich Nhat Hanh, with Tay, and a mother of three children or four children. She got up and asked this question to Thai. She said, "Is it possible for me as a mother with four children to become awakened? I can't live in the monastery. I can't practice, morning and, 24 hours a day, whatever. Can I do it?" And Ty was so clear and not any hesitation. He said, absolutely, absolutely, you can become enlightened. This isn't just a path for some and not for others. And I think, um, and he was very clear too. Sometimes he would say, lay people can practice better than monastics sometimes. Like he didn't have, it wasn't like just because you were a monastic, you always were, an advanced practitioner compared to lay people. He was very clear about that, like that it all depends how you practice. You can have all the conditions in the world in a monastery and not use them and not advance in your practice. And you can have very difficult situations where you're not, supported in your practice and you can go very far. And so he was really clear that it's not, the robe doesn't make, it's your practice. It's not your status, it's not your title, it's not your position. It's what do you do, when you get angry? What do you do when you feel, disappointed or betrayed? How do you practice? How do you take care of your loneliness, um, of your jealousy, or whatever, right? Like, how do you actually take care of yourself, take care of the people around you? And so I think Deepa Ma's message or life, where I mean, her teachers, some of her teachers were monastic, but one of her main teacher, Munindraji, was a lay, Anagarika, an Indian teacher. Um, and I think maybe also his way of living in the world and her just the facts of her life. She had a teenage daughter when she began to practice in Burma and decided when with the World War with the government in Burma becoming more and more hostile to foreigners, especially Indians, she left with her daughter. She went back to India and Amita talks about how she went to the suburbs. The people there weren't interested in her teaching, so she went to an inner city. She lived in this very crowded housing complex where it was all, mothers. There was a widow with 6 kids, and Malati in the book, and she led that woman to awakening. Um, and by having her pay attention to the suckling sensation when she was suckling her infant, that was her practice to every time she breastfed to really feel and be mindful of all the sensations. So, I mean, she was incredibly resourceful in terms of finding anchoring points in any householder's life for mindfulness. And I think Thich Nhat Hanh very much has offered the same kind of teaching of like walking meditation, right? We always have to walk. You can walk mindfully. That can be your practice. It doesn't have to be sitting if that's not available to you, or if you can't make 30 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever. You can walk to the bus and know you're walking to the bus. You can make your breakfast for your family with awareness and wash dishes in awareness. He talked about bringing, deep attention to all the different things we do throughout the day. And so, um, just in my own journey, I I think, what I really receive from Dipa Ma is the circumstances of your life don't need to limit you,
Mhm.
don't need to determine how much or how deeply or how well you can practice. If you simply take the bare bones of the instructions of knowing what your body is doing when your body is doing that, knowing where your mind or thoughts or emotions are going when they're doing that, in any situation, then you can deepen in your path. And I had a very scary time when I was leaving the monastery. I really didn't know how I would continue my practice. It wasn't clear to me that I could continue the way I wished to outside of the monastery. And certainly, while my practice and daily life looks very different now than when I was a nun, I don't feel like the heart of my life has changed. Like the heart of what guides me, of what's important to me, of what I'm living for, right? In terms of the mindfulness trainings and the core teachings of the Buddha of compassion, of wisdom, of trying to show up deeply for myself and for others. Like that's not different than when I was a nun. Like the aspiration is still there. It's just the form of it has changed. Um,
Yeah, thank you for
yeah.
that. Thank you for that. So I think we have like 11 minutes. Should we open it up maybe?
Yes, yes, yes.
Mm, Again, sorry guys for running out of time.
So we actually had we have reflections on Andrew Young, um, but let me invite us all to just reflect. Um, Maybe what's one thing that you're still sitting with from these interviews? Is there a moment, a phrase, a story that keeps coming back to you? Is there a practice that you want to take on or a way of being that you want to grow from these teachings. And if you had to name one thing that you're harvesting from all of these talks from this series, what would it be? And I'll put those questions in the chat in case you want to reflect on them. And you could write it in the chat a little bit if you'd like. Um, and then we'd love to also have a few people unmute and just share briefly. So, yes, Amy, the song was Eric Bibb, A Ship Called Love, and I'll put that in the chat as well.
And he's probably one of our favorite musicians.
Or, if you might want to respond to these questions, but maybe you have a question for us, that's also fine. So we've been sitting under the shade of these three great teachers, Dorothy Day, Dipa Ma, Andrew Young, and we want to hear what's rooting in you. So,
Is there a book or a movie about Dorothy Day's life that you would recommend? Yes, absolutely. I mean, there is a sort of Hollywood a movie about Dorothy Day called Entertaining Angels, which is a dramatized version of her life. I personally like it. There are also at least two different documentaries um, available that feature Dorothy Day. And then there are a number of books. The book that I really like is her autobiography called Long Loneliness. And we can include that in the resources, as well as there are a couple of books about her. And we could also include those uh, in the sort of notes that we will send to you all. Different books emphasize different things, and I'm happy to sort of mention that in the notes in terms of which books to read for what. Um,
and just a couple of reflections coming in, and then I think Rue had their hand up, but Um, so Shay shares Dipa Ma's way in was meditation, but also equally metta. Yes, thank you for lifting that up. It was such an important part of her teachings. Marina shares embodiment. Yeah, but thank you so much. And Patty O'Hara shared embodying our spirituality within the context of our moment to moment ordinary lives. Rue, I found it profound to hear that St. Francis was uncomfortable to see the leper. I felt guilty for finding it hard to read the first chapter of Adam's book, his experience of the slums in India, something in all these stories where discomfort leads to an opening to courage. Thank you for that.
and also, Mary is recommending a book, A Harsh and Dreadful Love, Story of the Catholic Worker, is well worth reading. And then Monique, one takeaway, community and looking after one another.
Mm.
Thank you for those.
Lynn shares, I find myself getting distracted and upset by so many injustices happening in the world. It's challenging to me to find compassion for those causing so much harm. I pray for more patience and love for even those who cause so much harm. Thank you, Lynn.
Yeah.
Yeah, so real. And that was, oh yeah, and Genevieve shares, we didn't get much to Andrew Young today, but I keep thinking about what he said about the best and most effective leaders being those who led with humility versus bullying, the importance of strong women as mentors in his life, and the importance of being able to put ourselves in the shoes of even those perceived as enemies. Thank you, Genevieve. A a real response in a way to what Lynn shared. And that was, I think, something that really touched all of us as Adam and I reflected on Andrew Young's interview as well, was he had so much equanimity about the harsh kind of things I think that would have stopped a lot of us in our tracks. The way he talked about the kind of people he dealt with and the situations of hatred and fear and violence as just how do I just see these people as people? How do I help them see me as another person? And how do I humanize the relationship and take, address that kind of fundamental delusion that we are not the same, that we're not, humans sharing this earth. Um, yeah, and so a book recommendation for Deepama, the book of Amita Schmidt, I think it's called just Deepama.
I think it's called Dipama, yeah, and
Yeah,
that's a wonderful book with so many beautiful stories and sort of quotes from the teachings.
yeah.
And I think maybe just one thing I wanted to mention, one of the things in that interview that was really very beautiful is this idea that people continue to experience her even today as this presence that just shows up, which is also very similar to this idea of the community of saints that we have in the Christian tradition. And I feel like reading that book can help us all to befriend her as this bodhisattva who's still with us that we can call upon, that we can be supported by in our practice.
And Patty shared building bridges with love and connection, even with people who think very differently. Yeah, there were wonderful stories about that from Andrew Young's life, um, working on getting Black and white teachers in the South to talk to each other. That story of it coming into a school that was having so much challenge. Um, yeah. So, Evniki, grateful for the invitation to sit and root with an expansive tree and support from ancestors.
Yeah, and also I'm so grateful for the session on Deepama. I had never heard of her before. Thank you so much. And the links that we shared to the interviews, if you haven't had a chance to watch them, please do. Uh, what each of the speakers shared is just really, really wonderful. And I think you will find it inspiring, as we found it very inspiring. It's a way to really sort of get to know the people deeply. Uh,
So, is there anyone who wants to unmute and share before we bring our time to a close with our Buddhist Christian Bodhisattva prayer? Any last brief reflection? Okay, so I'll share my screen and we invite you um, to recite this with us. Inspiration to overcome my own fears and weaknesses, to courageously step out into love and do what I'm called to do. Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. So, share this. Okay, so we can read this together.
Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is discord, union. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is confusion, clarity. Where there is sadness, joy.
May I become at all times, both now and forever, a protector for those without protection, a guide for those who have lost their way, a ship for those with oceans to cross, a bridge for those with rivers to cross, a sanctuary for those in danger, a lamp for those without light, a place of refuge for those who lack shelter, and a servant to all in need. For as long as space endures, and for as long as living beings remain, until then may I too abide to dispel the misery of the world.
O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
Amen. So thank you so much, everyone, for your presence here today. And we'll be in touch over the summer about our upcoming offerings in the fall. We'll let you know when we start back.
Thank you so much, and we'll have some exciting things happening in the fall. So we hope to see you. In the meantime, you know how to find us if you need to reach out. Many blessings to you all.